Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for our September series on college journey conversations. We're super excited to be here tonight. Stefanie Miles is with us, of course, from Huntsville, Alabama, and we're super excited, Stefanie, that you could join us tonight to talk about our topic tonight of simple solutions for writing your college essay. So yeah, we're all excited about that, aren't we? Yeah?
What everybody dreams of is to write their college essay.
That's right. It's like something that keeps them up at night in anticipation. Most definitely. Stefanie, we are so glad to have you as part of our team at Capstone Educational Consultants, and pretty cool that you are not in Georgia, as many may think, but you are actually in Huntsville, Alabama, and where you reside there with your family and have Capstone's office there. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our listening audience a little bit about your family and maybe a little bit how you came into this and what happens there in Huntsville with Capstone.
Well, it's fun to be a part of Capstone. I've been here about 16 years in Huntsville. My husband's retired military, so this was our last duty station for him. So we've stayed. We have 3 children, and the oldest just graduated from Mississippi State. He's in seminary now down in Mississippi. And our middle son was a junior at Mississippi State in animal and dairy science. And a fun fact about him this semester is he is taking not only how to butcher, but also floral design. So you never know what you're going to do when you take your courses in college. And my daughter is a freshman at Alabama, University of Alabama, and she is pretty much holed up in her dorm room. Oh. So they're experiencing lots of the fun COVID restrictions there, but she's making the best of it, and it'll be fine, and she'll have a good war story to tell her children. And we live on a 10-acre farm just outside of Huntsville. And let's see, we have dogs, cats, horses, and chickens.
Wow, you're out in the country.
We do live out in the country. So every morning I get up and check for eggs and throw some feed for the chickens, look after the horse. So when I'm not helping students, that's one of the things that I do. We've been together, about 5+ years, Mark?
We have, yes.
So, yep. And I just can't say enough about the blessing of working with you. It truly has been a blessing. But we work here with students in Huntsville, but we also work with them across the country. So it doesn't really matter. We do, particularly now, we've done a lot of remote. Everybody's used to that. So really the sky's the limit on where we can help students, which is what our passion is. So.
Now, of course, I've visited there in Huntsville and, of course, visited your location there. And while it sounds like you're like in the boondocks, right, and way out in the country, you're really not. It's a nice rural town that has an outlying country feel. You happen to live in a nice old country home, which is exciting. And one of the really unique things I think about your place is your office, right? You actually have a Capstone's office in Huntsville is actually at your home. And it's been retrofitted into an office. And tell us a little bit about your office space. I know we can't see it. We see a little bit of it behind you, but I just think it's super unique. So just kind of describe it to us if you can.
It is actually a sun porch. It used to be a screened-in porch. And then at some point, our house is built in the 1890s. And it's kind of got the big front porch on the front. And so this is just a big sun porch. And one day I decided that it would be much better as my office because I love all the light and I get to look out on one of the pastures, and it's just a good feeling place to work. So when others unfortunately have to be in offices with small windows, I do not have that issue. I get to see outside and look in the garden and look in the pasture. So it's been nice.
You definitely have an awesome window view, and that's pretty exciting. Well, we are certainly, as I mentioned right out the gate, that super excited to have you as a part of the Capstone consulting family. And we're excited to be that our families can benefit from your experience and your knowledge and your college knowledge, and moving forward, all the wonderful things that come along with that. I know that you have counseled many students along the way and provided some really valuable insight. Though one of the great values, before we get to our topic for the evening, of the fact that you and I get to work together is that we get to collaborate together. So not only do you, when you hire someone or choose Capstone Educational Consultants, you're actually choosing both of us at the same time, and that's pretty exciting to be able to, you know, provide a valuable experience through the knowledge of not just one but of two, and we can collaborate together to find the answers of all the questions that are presented to both of us. So that's pretty exciting. Tonight's topic: simple solutions for writing your college essay. I know it's one of those things that students are dreamy about, because they just they can't believe that opportunity to write their college essay has finally arrived. But here it is. Our high school seniors around this time are kind of wrestling through what it is to write their college essay about. Of course, we all know that the Common Application is perhaps one of the most popular college prompts that students will work on, a personal statement essay, having one of several to choose from, but all kind of boil down to that same personal statement essay, which basically is about them, right? Their essay. All of their essays, supplemental or otherwise, often revolve around themselves. We talked a little bit about in the preview description of this session tonight that we were going to have a discussion on how to start your essay. We're going to have a little bit of discussion about what to write, and then we're going to save a little sneaky insight at the very end, but we're not going to tell you about it unless you stick with us, and some bonus info. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. That'll be kind of fun, right? It's always nice to have a little bit of incentive, right? But how do you start this essay? You know, I mean, I've got a number of students, as you do, that are in that vein right now of needing to start their essay, and you know, it's a lot like popping that clutch, trying to figure out how to get it going, and they're stuck, not knowing really what to talk about. Are you seeing the same thing?
I am. I think, you know, as adults, we always try to teach the kids, don't be self-centered. Don't think about yourself all the time. It's not all about you. At least that's what my kids heard.
That's the truth.
But now it is.
Yeah.
Now is the time to think about yourself and what has impacted you, whether a situation, and kind of look deep inside. And to be retrospective. It's not just the time to be like, oh, it's no big deal. Nobody wants to hear about that. Because the colleges really do want to hear about that. The admissions people want to hear, because they receive hundreds, thousands of these applications. So, and when they're looking through, what's special about you? And there is so many special things about you. And now is the time to brag.
Right.
How
Now,
you do that can come in different forms, but now is the time to say, I need to advocate for myself, and I want to share how, I don't know that I would like to use the word great, but how great you are, because you are. You're special and you're unique, and now's the time.
right. Yeah, and this is an opportunity for you to really shine and tell admissions what's so unique about you. And here's what's interesting too is many students may have a hard time understanding, believing, seeing, thinking about the fact that they are great. Like, there is something unique about them. They are special. There is something to write about. Many students might actually have a difficult time kind of thinking through that lens. Would you think so?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. So how does one start an essay? Right now, we can think about the logistics of that. Right, sit down at a desk, grab a piece of paper, grab your computer, put your fingers on the keys, turn on the music if you like music, and start typing away or writing away. And while that may have been a great method for Ralph Waldo Emerson, right, and when he wrote, or or any other popular writer per se, it doesn't work for everybody like that, right? So what are some, ways to kind of kickstart? I like to say kickstart because it's kind of that one way to kind of exfoliate you onto paper, so to speak. What are some good ways? So tonight, I think what we can do is we can talk about, I've thought about, we've talked about some 8 ways maybe that we can kind of come out of the gate and potentially start an essay. So we're not necessarily talking about a logistical way, but more of a creative way of starting your essay. Now, here's what we're not going to talk about tonight. We're not necessarily going to talk about what format you use. And we're not going to talk about what type of structure you might use to write your essay. Your English teacher might have their preferred method of writing an essay. We have some thoughts about that, but we'll reserve those for another time. But we're going to talk about kind of ideas on how to kind of kickstart subject-wise, because the subject's you, right? So let's talk about some of those. One particular way is to find some kind of interesting fact about yourself, right? What is something interesting about you? It might even be maybe something interesting about a historical figure that you're related to, right? You might be a relative of a great, 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 or a founding and fill in the blank, or you may be, the son or daughter of a World War II veteran, or a World War I veteran, oh my gosh, or a Revolutionary War veteran, or any number of things, but some kind of interesting fact that would really catch the eye of your reader and find that to be very interesting. Like maybe you're related to the man who walked a tight wire across Niagara Falls. That's so random. I don't even know where that came from in my head, nor why that kind of came out. But that was kind of that's super super interesting, right? That's an interesting fact if it were true. What do you think?
Well, for instance, in my family, I really wanted my daughter to apply and go to or think about going to Wofford.
Oh, yeah.
Because my mother's maiden name is Wofford, and my daughter actually has Wofford in her name. And
think of all the t-shirts you could have.
I know, right?
Wofford.
And it would be her name.
Yeah.
And just the founder of Wofford never married. So he actually has no direct descendants, but one of his brothers we are descended from. And that would have been something cool for her to be able to write about. Should have had to probably do a little research about that. But sometimes something that's interesting. Unfortunately, she did not choose to go to Wofford, so we did not get to go down that road. But something interesting, and you might not think you're interesting, but you're more interesting than you're really giving yourself credit for.
Yeah.
So just kind of think about it. I mean, what do people say about you if you were to ask your best friend, what is something about me that stands out? What would they say?
Right. And that what's really interesting about that, Stefanie, is that kind of puts you on a rather vulnerable plateau. Like you're in a place that you really don't know what that answer is going to be when you ask that question of someone, especially someone you trust like a friend. But to be willing to ask that question means that you're going to be rather vulnerable. Well, that's kind of what this essay is. It's about writing about yourself in a way that really kind of tells the world, so to speak, even though you're not letting the world know, you're just letting admissions know, right? But you feel like you're telling the world about who you are. And sometimes you're not wearing that on in an essay all the time. So you feel kind of vulnerable. So being vulnerable is part of this process. And you have to be willing to kind of go there.
Which is counterintuitive to the kinds of essays you've already written. I mean, if you think about, most people have written English essays or a history paper, which is a completely different thought process.
Right.
You're reflecting on something you've read or a historical moment in time.
Right.
This is reflecting on you.
Right.
And that's really hard.
It is very
to be objective and not to be overly critical, but to be objective and, as you just said, vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. So another way that you can start this essay is open up with a description of something. Okay. So it's not that you're not going to necessarily disclose what that something is, and that something could be the setting. The sunset on the beach that you were on when you remembered. And so you describe this setting. It could be a particular circumstance that you were in, and you would have kind of described that particular circumstance. So the idea here is to kind of draw your reader in through a particular description. So if you think of it in terms of like an artist, right? An artist takes a brush and uses paint to tell a story, and they're doing it in a very descriptive, colorful way. You're doing that with words, and you say to yourself or to me and you, right? I'm no artist, right? I'm not a writer. That's okay. Everyone is an artist. Everyone may not appreciate your art, but everyone's an artist, and everybody can paint a picture. And I always say, no matter what my picture looked like after I painted it, there's one person that loved it every single time. And moms always love your art. So that's an awesome reminder to me that no matter what I create, at least my mom would always be the one that loved it, right? That's good stuff. So open up with like a really good description of something, and be colorful, be descriptive. You don't have to give away the goods quite yet in the story, right? But just paint that picture of what you're trying to convey early before getting to you in that description.
Well, you kind of want the reader to come and sit by you where you are.
I like that.
What are you seeing? What smells are you smelling? Is the sun on your face, or is the sun setting behind you? I mean, bring them along with you before you delve into that. And that's just creative words that really, think outside the box of the normal words we would all use in a normal language. As we're having a conversation on a normal basis, because you want to bring somebody along with you for the ride that you're about to give them about how great you are.
Yeah, and you want to say it with your words. Like, you want to describe it the way you would describe it.
Right.
But spend time on your senses, right? Your taste, smell, touch, vision. What do you see? All of those to help describe. If the sun is facing you, then it's touching your face. So do you feel that warmth? And what does that remind you of? And, be descriptive. That's a very good thing. Another good way to kind of start out is to ask the reader a question. That's always fun, right? Because that kind of makes the reader kind of go, and if they wonder what the answer is, and you may or may not answer that question in the process, but by conveying that question suggests that you know the answer. And they want to kind of see that. And it could be in a way that represents you as you build, as I refer all the time, as you build that bridge through your writing to disclose kind of who you are in a detailed way. Yeah?
I agree. I was just thinking about that. I mean, I lost my complete train of thought. You're going to have to.
We all do. It's part of that age. It's like, my goodness, something shiny just showed up and it took my attention. I get it.
Okay, I had a birthday yesterday, so let's not talk about age. Let's just
Hi.
move on. Move on.
Birthday, Stephanie. Woo!
Woo!
36 and holding. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, another option in starting the essay is to, this was one of my favorite, is to describe, you know, we talked a little bit about a description, but delay, right? Don't give it away quite yet. Describe the circumstance, describe what it is you're trying to express and about yourself, but delay that disclosure until later in the essay to kind of lead on the reader in such a way that they get really excited about it. That's one of my favorites to do.
Well, you want them to think, what's going to happen? Where are you going with this? Because often when you start something, it could go in different directions. So which way are you going to go? Because once again, that will tell the reader more about you. So, and you want to keep the reader interested as they're reading your essay.
Yeah.
And not think, oh, this is the same thing I've read 45 times. And in doing the things that we're talking about, that will keep them interested, because a lot of people don't spend really quality time thinking through this at the beginning, because this is all stuff to do at the beginning.
Right. This is right out of the gate.
This is, you know, brainstorming and thinking this through at the beginning, because that way you can form your essay that way. You don't want to write the essay and then go, oh, I need to do this.
Right. Exactly. So this is fun. Another option is to actually tell a secret about yourself. That's always fun and super vulnerable, right? But to tell a secret about yourself, or something that you know that no one else knows, or that you maybe think no one else knows. That's kind of like, that's super engaging, right? In the process, that's fun. To kind of tell that secret right out of the gate. Again, that kind of reflects back to that level of vulnerability you're willing to take. But a great catch, like that's a great way to kind of bring that reader into your story quickly.
Because remember, sometimes there's a couple of different readings of the essays. And so the initial reading by the admissions person, and if you've drawn them in, as they're sifting through, they're going to want other people to read this and go, oh my goodness. And so that takes you further down the road of admissions, which is what you want, because you ultimately want to be admitted. So sometimes just that vulnerability, and although I'm saying other people are reading it, it stays within that room. I mean, this is not something that's going to show up in the Wofford paper. And I'm only saying Wofford because we used it earlier. You know, it's not going to be out there for all to see. So being vulnerable is okay, because they're not going to be like, oh yeah, this kid said this and tell the world. That's not what's going to happen. These are private things that they will keep private.
Right. Absolutely. That's a very good point. I love those essays that kind of open up with a joke or something humorous that's related to them. And I tell you, this is a tricky one, because sometimes students they don't think that their story is very funny, but it really can be, right? Or the experience they're trying to describe, they may not feel like it's very funny, but it probably is. Even though they may not think it is, it probably is. And there's probably someone that does think it's funny, but opening up with a joke can be a great way to kind of break the ice. I told one of my students recently that, you know, it's not like you're trying to be a stand-up comic. You know, this isn't a stand-up comedy routine writing engagement. You don't have to feel like it is, but you can open up with something that's a story or a circumstance that has happened to you that's really funny. Like, we've all seen the stories or the videos on America's Funniest Home Videos or something like that, where, you know, it gets us in stitches. And those are great stories to open up with if you can be descriptive enough to say that happened. Even an embarrassing moment is kind of a fun way to open up and express yourself and be vulnerable. It's just kind of funny. And again, you're gonna be drawing a conclusion or drawing a bridge from funny to you. So there's some kind of connection there. I was telling one of my students recently too that as an example, I kind of gave him this as an example. I said, there once was a story of a zebra who had black stripes, right? And that's kind of an interesting way of opening up an essay, right? There once was a zebra who had black stripes, and everyone described me like those black stripes, but I am more like those white stripes, which is what the zebra is really all about. And that serves as kind of a bridge of being able to kind of make a comparison between who you are as it relates to how he sees people see him in a very funny, kind of creative, descriptive way. Gosh, I hope there aren't very many zebra essays out there after this. I doubt there will be. But you get my point, right? Right? It can be funny. Funny's good. We love humor, right?
Well, we so often don't let even the people close to us see, they only see the black stripes.
Right.
And this is really the time to show them the white stripes.
Yep.
And but to be able to bridge people to that would be super cool.
Yeah.
To be able to think through that, open that up.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us to our last point in this little how to start segment. Our 8th point would be to present a contrast between opposite positions. And so we're talking about opposites demonstrated by a zebra himself, right? We could definitely be able to kind of see some of those things that could be written about ourselves that are very opposite and opposing, and use that as kind of a way into your essay.
Because most of us do have opposites. We're not all just a vanilla cookie, although I love vanilla cookies. But most of us,
vanilla cookie.
Most of us have chocolate and vanilla, and you kind of blend that. And sometimes you are chocolate, and sometimes you are vanilla, and they're both really good.
Right. And let's not leave out the fruity flavors. That
was not nice. Or the nutty ones.
Or the nutty ones. There's nothing wrong with being nutty. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So let's move on to our next segment, and that is what to write. Now, we talked a little bit about how to start, but how do we determine what to write? And so we have some rules. I think we've got some really good rules that we've kind of come up with in what we should determine to write about. And there's 4 very specific things we should make in our essay. Okay. So Stefanie, what's our first one that we should make? We should make it what?
Personal.
Yeah.
Make it self-centered.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, like we've been told all our lives, it's not about you, right?
Exactly.
There's more to this world than you, and all of this fun stuff. But the truth of the matter is these essays, the application process, admissions world, it is kind of all about you. This is your chance to kind of be descriptive about that. And so this is personal. We're going to get into some bonus info in just a moment that's about what we do with that personal information. But you should be self-centered in this. We should talk a little bit about yourself in this, because students, the admissions office is going to learn even more so these days than years prior, because so many schools are no longer looking upon the test, ACT or SAT, to help formulate a decision. They're going to reach even deeper into the essay to learn more about you. And so these are really important times in the essay. The second point on what to write for us, these general rules that we've made, is that you not only have to make it personal, as Stefanie suggested, but you've got to be detailed. So this is your opportunity to decide, how are you going to be detailed? Okay. Are you going to choose to take your subject and write broadly about it. Maybe providing many descriptions or many examples along the way, so your topic gets broad. Or are you going to spend time on a single subject matter about yourself and speak more in depth about it? So broad or deep, that's your choice. In church, we always have that song, deep and wide, right? And so this is kind of how we go deep and wide in our essays. So make it personal, make it detailed. And what's your next one?
Be thoughtful, be introspective.
Yeah, make it thoughtful. And yeah, go ahead and finish that.
Well, write how you speak. Don't make it like we talked about an English essay. It's conversational because you're talking about you and your thoughts and how you've been affected. So don't make it stilted and use words that you would never use normally. This is not necessarily the time to find thesaurus.com and find every synonym you can find. So it's not supposed to be formal. This is supposed to be like you're talking to a person that's reading it, not your English teacher is looking for your grammar mistakes. Now, saying that, make sure you use spell check. Make sure it is grammatically correct and you don't switch your verbs and all that. So you do have to have some responsibility in that, but make it personal. Make it from your heart.
If you've never said the word plethora in a sentence to your friends, you should never write it in your essay. Right?
Okay, I do say the word plethora, so I would get to use that. I do say.
If you were to write the essay, you could use that word, but I want to see the high school student who uses the word plethora in a conversation regularly with their friends, and there may be some, and that's great. But that goes to my point, right? If you don't speak it, if you don't use it in your own vocabulary, don't reach into the thesaurus or the dictionary to pull out words you've never used before. This is a time to be you, right? And that's really super important. The last point we have here with what to write, we have the first one was to make it personal. The second was to make it detailed. The third is to make it thoughtful and introspective, and make sure the tone is your voice in that. So all those kind of go together. And the last one is make it fun. Like, have fun, have a party with it. I like that. Yeah, that's you. That was so not me. My kids are definitely going to make fun of me if I ever do this video. They probably won't, but if they did. And have fun with it. And that's hard for a high school student to kind of understand what we mean. Their definition of fun looks a lot different than writing an essay. But having fun with your essay means taking liberty, taking risk, being vulnerable, and going down roads of description that you wouldn't ordinarily do in your own tone, in your own voice, of course. But have fun with it, right? Enjoy it. Have a good time with it. Be proud of what you've written because it's you. It's all about you.
Be proud of who you are.
Right.
You are special. You are unique. And tell the world that. This is the first chance you get to really say, hey, it's me. Pick me.
Right. That's right. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
All right. And now I think we need a drum roll, but we don't have sound effects on this show. In our college journey conversations, there's no sound effects. If there are sound effects, they're coming out of Stephanie's yard, and it's probably chickens or something like that. This cat.
Dogs, yeah.
That's a joke. That's all for us to laugh over. Ha ha ha. Right? Okay, moving on. Our bonus info of the evening is, and this was not a part of our description, but we felt like it would definitely be some added value to this particular subject matter. And that is not only how to start or what to write, but the bonus info, of course, is who should help. Oh, and the crowd goes silent, right? Who should help? Why? Because there are a lot of people who love to participate in the college essay process other than the student. And that could be problematic for the student.
Yeah.
No one else sees the problem with it, but many students definitely do. So we recognize the fact that everybody has an opinion. And this is important for students to understand, right? Because since everyone has an opinion about your essay, it's hard to determine as a high school student whose opinion matters most. Right? Whose does? Is it mom's? Is it dad's? Is it your counselors, your English teachers, your grandmothers, your older brother who just got in to MIT? Does his matter more? Whose matters in this? And so that's a really tough position to be in as a high school student, is trying to decide whose voice matters most about your essay. Well, we can answer that easy by the fact that it's your voice as a student that matters most. Your opinion matters most on your essay. It's your essay, right? And so here we're talking to the high school student who's writing the essay at this point, because we feel that it's super important for the student to recognize his own voice and recognize the fact that this is his story, her story, and that they kind of own it, and they need to own it. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the hard thing, and coming from a mother perspective, we want to fix it. We want it to be perfect. We want it to be exactly how, as a mom, we want our students to be seen, our child, this precious gift that we have.
Yeah.
But then it becomes our voice.
Yeah.
It's not their voice. And, you know, parents need to kind of take a step back and let them write it. And it's fine to bounce ideas, because once again, your parents love you most and they want you to succeed, but it's not their story, and it's not their story about you. It's your story, your voice. And in a very respectful kind of way, smile at your mom, tell her that you love her, and then go write your story. Wow. And like you just brought up, you need to be real careful who edits. And if mom tends to want to rewrite and has helped you with every science fair project you have ever done, she might not be the best person to look it over. It might be somebody else.
Right.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I always kind of share with parents how precious this moment really is to the student. It may not come across that way at first, and you may have the best of intentions as you've described, but it is a very precious moment. I always describe to parents I speak with and for which I work with as well, that I consider the college essay, or I ask them to consider the college essay a gift. And then I ask them to think about the last time they received or gave a gift to someone for a particular event, cause, event, like a birthday or Christmas, or some moment where a gift was deserved. And typically gifts fall around a date maybe, or a time when it's best to give and receive. And so I consider them to consider the essay a gift, and that your time to open that gift is when your son or daughter give it to you to read at the very end. And that's your gift. And your gift is to receive it and read it and be totally excited about it because it's done, and that you had no part of it and it's all them. Further, I kind of describe the fact that, I think we all have lived in a world of Legos. Who hasn't, right? Legos has been, I've stepped on more Legos than I care to imagine barefoot. And there's nothing worse than that, Stephanie.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope.
But if you imagine Legos, right? And if your son or daughter, if we can imagine together, I'm going to paint a little picture for you. But if you can imagine together your son or daughter having all of these Legos, and they're all the same color. Okay, so they all have one color. We'll say it's red. They all have red Legos. Mom has a different color Lego, and dad has a different color Lego, and every participant or entity or person that they're involved with has a different color Lego. And every time any one of those individuals enters the scene of touching, having a part of, giving advice for, editing, writing, holy mackerel, any of those moments for your essay, you have to take one of your child's Legos away and replace it with yours. And suddenly we have like a red wall of Legos with different colors infused in it. And clearly we can now see a demonstration of involvement that isn't pure at all. There's elements. And the more you're infused in this, the more your son's or daughter's color changes. And that's the tone, that's their voice that you're replacing. And so eventually you don't even recognize it because it's so colorful, right? It's no longer their single color. Elements of them are in there, but it's not their voice anymore. It's a combination of so many. And so it's very difficult to maintain that voice when there are so many different elements involved. So that's who should help. We think that it should boil down to, at most, consider only 2 people, right? We think consider only 2 people who might get involved in this process to keep the process as pure as possible. One of those we'd encourage to be someone who is familiar with the writing process, understands writing, maybe a strong writer themselves, a great storyteller, someone who's experienced in this. We love our English teachers, and while many of them may be great at this in the classroom and for assignments, for a personal statement essay, it might be a little different, for which we're trying to convey a somewhat of a different message. But if they're great storytellers, they'd be great to include in that as well. But the other one ought to be someone who knows you well, right? Because if someone who knows you well picks up your essay and reads it, and you say plethora, and you've never said that to them before in their life, they're gonna go, dude, what? Who wrote this? Because you don't talk like this. Doesn't even sound like you. Right. And that's the value of having someone that knows you well. And again, this may not be a family member, right? Who knows you well, that could read it and kind of give you that insight. And then remember, lastly, that your voice is the most important thing in this entire process. Keeping that wall of Legos pure in color is super important in this process. So constantly remember that. I love what you said when we first started this episode, Stephanie, about you matter. You're important, you're unique, your story is valuable, you have something to say, we want to hear about it, and you should enjoy writing about it. Absolutely. And I just think this is a great process for students, and I think it's a great way for them to kind of really develop this moment in starting to write their college essay. Absolutely. Well, thank you definitely for coming tonight. We want to thank all of our listeners and viewers tonight for being with us. We're excited about our September series as Stephanie and I have this conversation ongoing every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Huntsville time, right? You know it. Yes. So we want to make sure everybody around the country knows when they can tune in. We'd love to have you. We'd love to see you here next week, next Wednesday night as well, for our next episode of College Journey Conversations. As usual, you can find us at www.capstoneed.com to learn more about what we do at Capstone Educational Consultants. We'd love to be a part of your family, just like many have chosen already. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you everybody for joining us. Y'all have a great night and
Good
enjoy
night.
that essay.